We may
Once
be
upon a
poor,
time,
but our
in a
love
quiet
is
village
rich.
tucked between
Look at
two
them,
hills,
so
there lived a
pathetic.
young girl named
She
Adama.
actually thinks this is her happy
But what if
ending.
this humble girl, treated like a servant, was destined for a life no one could imagine? She was only 19, but her beauty could stop time. Her skin was smooth and dark, like ripe mango peel. Her eyes, round and soft like a baby's, and her voice, when she spoke, was gentle and kind, like a stream flowing through dry land. Adama was not just beautiful. She was hard-working. Every morning, before the first cockcrow, she would fetch water, sweep the compound, and prepare the morning meal. She lived with her uncle, Uncle Oziu Amina, and his wife, Aunt Neka, along with their two daughters, Goy and Chinier. Adama's parents had died in a fire when she was just 11. Their house had burnt to the ground while they were asleep. Since then, she had lived under her uncle's roof, if you could call it living. To Uncle Oziu Amina and his wife, she was more of a housemaid than a child. "Adama, come and wash these plates now," Aunt Neka would shout, even if Adama had just finished cooking. "Adama, you think because people say you're fine, you will open your legs and fly out of my house?" "Foolish girl," she would hiss, with her hand on her waist. But Adama never replied. She had learned silence was safer. If she talked back, she would sleep outside. If she cried, they would say she was pretending. Despite all of this, she remained kind. She greeted elders with respect, helped market women carry their load, and never laughed when others were mocked. Could her kindness, in a world so cruel, lead her to a destiny no one saw coming? That was why suitors started noticing her. It began with simple greetings in the market. Then came the bold ones, rich men from the city who came to the village to find a good village wife. Some came for Goy, some for Chinier, but after seeing Adama in the kitchen or passing with firewood on her head, their minds changed. "I thought you said your daughters were beautiful," one man whispered to Uncle Oziu Amina, not knowing Adama was his niece. "I'm not here for them. I want to know the girl with the calm eyes," another had said, pointing at Adama from his tinted car. That evening, the entire house turned into thunder. "You are the one blocking your sister's shine," Aunt Neka screamed, throwing Adama's slippers outside. "Every man comes here and changes mouth. What did you put in your body?" "I don't even talk to them," Adama whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Shut up," Uncle Oziu Amina barked. "Don't stand there like a carved stone. Who asked you to talk? Since you have refused to respect yourself, I will make sure you never smell marriage. You will marry a mad man if possible." Adama looked up at him slowly, hurt flashing in her eyes. Uncle Oziu Amina saw it and slapped her. "Don't look at me like that again. You think you're something because of small beauty? I will show you I'm your father." From that night, everything changed. Aunt Neka no longer let her eat with the family. She locked the bathroom door and told Adama to bathe at the backyard tap. Goy and Chinier mocked her whenever visitors came. "Go and wear your rag. Maybe one rich man will propose again," Goy said one evening, laughing as she poured soapy water on the floor Adama had just cleaned. Chinier joined. Abio, let her parade her hips like she did last time when that politician's son came. Adama said nothing. She bent down again and wiped the floor quietly, but something inside her started to crack. One Saturday afternoon, a stranger came to the house. He had dusty clothes, a wooden walking stick, and a crooked hat pulled low over his face. He looked tired, maybe even injured. The whole neighborhood watched as he limped into Uncle Oziu Amina's compound. The man didn't speak much. He only whispered to Uncle, and Uncle's eyes lit up like he had seen treasure. "You're serious? You want to marry her?" Uncle asked the beggar, pretending to whisper. "But you have nothing." "I have enough for someone who is humble," the man replied softly, his voice strange, calm, yet confident. They shook hands like they were sealing a business deal. That night, Uncle Oziu Amina called a family meeting. "Adama, sit down," he said. "We have found a husband for you." Adama turned slowly. Who is he, uncle? You don't need to ask questions. He is willing to take you as you are. No bride price, nothing. Just carry your cursed beauty and go. Goy snorted. Let her ask now. Maybe she wants Dango's son. Shut up, all of you, Aunt Neka snapped. We are doing her a favor. In fact, the wedding is in 2 weeks. Adama stared in silence. 2 weeks. Without knowing who he is? Without my consent? You're lucky we're even telling you, Aunt Neka said. We can as well throw you out tonight. Adama didn't sleep that night. She lay on her thin mattress, staring at the zinc roof as wind whistled through the holes. Her heart pounded. Was this her life, to be married off to a crippled stranger while her cousins lived freely? The next day, she saw him again, the beggar. He was sitting by the village square, feeding birds with groundnuts. His clothes were still dirty, but his hands looked clean, his nails trimmed. His posture was not that of a beggar. She looked at him, curious. Good afternoon, sir, she said shyly. He turned. Adama, he said softly. How are you? You know my name. I listened when your uncle shouted it yesterday. She almost smiled. You're the man I'm to marry. Yes. She looked down. Why me? Because you're different. She blinked. Different how? He smiled but said nothing. Then he stood, stretched slightly, his back straight for a second, and picked up his walking stick. See you soon, Adama, he said before walking off slowly. Adama stood there for a long time. That evening, her cousins mocked her again. I heard you were talking to your beggar husband, Chinier teased. Adama said nothing. You better get used to using leaves. He can't even afford tissue paper, Goy added. Still, Adama said nothing. Inside her heart, something was shifting. The shame still hurt. The betrayal still stung. But deep inside, she began to feel a strange kind of peace. Not joy, not happiness, but peace. Like her life was about to change. She didn't know how. She didn't know when, but somehow she believed it wouldn't end the way they thought. Adama stood in the middle of the compound the next morning, a small basin of soaked clothes in her hand. The sun was rising slowly, and the breeze was cool. She watched the sky for a second, hoping that maybe today would feel different. But behind her, she heard the sharp voice she knew too well. Are those clothes going to wash themselves? Aunt Neka snapped, stepping outside with her scarf tied in a rough knot. You're standing there like a tree, lazy girl. Adama bent her head without replying and walked over to the washing stones. Her hands dipped into the cold water, her fingers moving slowly. A few minutes later, Uncle Oziu Amina came out too, tying a wrapper over his singlet. He walked straight to the table under the mango tree and sat with a deep sigh. Then he called loudly, Goy, Chinier, come out. Let's have a meeting. The two girls ran out quickly, fixing their wrappers and rubbing sleep from their eyes. Adama didn't stop washing, but she listened. She didn't need to be part of the meeting to know it was about her. I met with the man again, Uncle said, his voice low but firm. He's ready. You mean the beggar? Goy asked, her face twisted in disgust. Yes, Aunt Neka replied sharply. And that's the best news I've heard this year. That useless girl will finally leave this house. Chinier hissed. I still don't understand. Why didn't we just throw her out? Must we marry her off like a bride? Throw her out and let one foolish man come back for her later? Aunt Neka replied. No, this way she will enter shame fully. By the time people hear she married a crippled beggar, nobody will ask of her again. Uncle Oziu Amina nodded. That's right. And no man will say we treated her unfairly. Let the village think we gave her a husband out of pity. Adama's hands paused inside the water. They were selling her off like an old pot. She looked up quietly, but nobody was watching her. They were too busy smiling, planning her pain. That evening, the beggar came again. This time he walked into the compound slowly, limping the way he always did, with his hat pulled down. But he greeted everyone politely. "Good evening, sir," he said to Uncle Oziu Amina. "Good evening, Ma. You've come again?" Aunt Neka asked, pretending to smile. "Yes, I came to discuss the arrangements." Adama stood at the far end of the house, her eyes fixed on the visitor. Her hands held a broom, but she wasn't sweeping. "Have you brought what we discussed?" Uncle asked quietly, looking around as if he didn't want the neighbors to hear. The man nodded. "Yes, it's not much, but I brought the token." He opened a small nylon bag and gave Uncle a worn envelope. Uncle opened it fast and counted the cash with his fingers. His eyes brightened. "This is okay," he whispered. "The wedding will be next week Saturday." Adama felt her stomach twist. They had agreed like traders in the market, and she was the item. Later that night, Adama sat alone behind the house. The moon was half full, and the stars above looked like quiet eyes watching her. She hugged her knees to her chest and didn't speak. She just listened to the frogs, to the wind, and to the distant voice of Goy and Chinier laughing inside. Suddenly, a shadow appeared beside her. "You're not sleeping," the voice said gently. She turned quickly. It was him, the beggar. She stood up immediately, shocked and confused. "Why? Why are you here?" "I was passing by," he said. "I saw you sitting alone." She stared at him. "You shouldn't be here." "If my uncle sees you," "I know," he said. "I'll go soon." "I just wanted to talk." "About what?" she asked. He stepped closer but still kept a little distance. "About us. About the wedding." Adama looked down. "What about it?" "I know this isn't what you wanted," he said softly. "I know you're not happy." She didn't reply. "But I want you to know," he continued, "I won't force you into anything. If you want to leave after the wedding, I will let you go." Adama raised her head slowly. "Why would you say that?" "Because I'm not here to punish you," he said. "I just wanted someone who could look beyond my face, someone who would treat me like a human being, not an object of pity." She blinked. "From the first day I saw you," he said, "you didn't laugh when the children mocked me. You didn't turn away when I asked for water. You greeted me with respect." She swallowed hard. "That's what I was taught." He nodded. "And that's why you're different." She stepped back, her voice breaking. "But I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be married off like a burden." "I know," he whispered. "And I'm sorry." They stood in silence. Then he bowed slightly. "Good night, Adama." He turned and walked away, his limp dragging him slowly into the darkness. The days passed quickly. Aunt Neka made sure Adama's life was harder than ever. She gave her the worst chores, shouted at her for no reason, and even slapped her once for walking like a princess. "You better bend that proud neck before your husband breaks it for you," she shouted. Goy and Chinier watched with smiles on their faces. They had stopped pretending. They were happy to see Adama suffer. One afternoon, while Adama was sweeping the compound, a group of women passed by. They pointed and whispered, "That's her," one of them said. "The girl marrying the cripple." Another laughed. "She thought her beauty would take her far. Now look at her." Adama kept sweeping. Her hands moved faster, but her eyes were wet. Later that evening, Aunt Neka called her inside. "Come and see what you will wear on that day." She threw a plastic bag on the bed. Adama opened it slowly. Inside was an old lace gown, torn at the sleeve and stained at the bottom. "This is not even clean," she said softly. Do you want me to buy new clothes for a wedding I didn't plan? Aunt Neka snapped. Be grateful I gave you something. Adama looked down. Can I at least fix it? Fix what? Goy laughed from the corner. So you can look like a queen beside your beggar king. Chenier joined. Don't worry. Nobody will be looking at you. They'll be watching to see if your husband will fall on his way to the altar. They burst into laughter. Adama held the bag and walked out quietly. That night, she sat alone again. The gown was beside her, folded on her lap. She touched it gently, wondering if this was what her life had come to. A voice broke her thoughts. You should sleep. She looked up. It was him again. You like appearing at night, she said, her voice tired. He smiled faintly. It's the only time I can speak to you without being chased away. She gave a small nod. He sat on a low stone nearby. Are you afraid? She hesitated. I'm not afraid of you. I'm afraid of what comes next. He looked at her, eyes calm. You're stronger than you know. She stared at him. Why do you talk like someone who's not what you appear to be? He smiled but didn't answer. She narrowed her eyes. Who are you really? I'm the man who wants to marry you, he said. That's not an answer. He stood. Maybe one day I'll give you the real one. Then he left, disappearing into the dark like a ghost. The night before the wedding, Uncle Oziu Amina held a small gathering in front of the house. Just close family and a few neighbors. He stood proudly, talking as if he had done something great. I didn't want to talk before, he said loudly, but now, let me speak. That girl, Adama, has been under my roof for years. I fed her. I clothed her, and now I'm giving her to a man who accepts her with her pride. A man who is kind enough to marry her without demanding anything. Some people nodded, others stayed quiet. But let this be a lesson, he continued. Beauty without respect leads to nothing. Adama sat at the side, wearing a plain wrapper and holding her knees. Her face was blank. In her heart, she was waiting for tomorrow. Not with joy, not with fear, but with the kind of silence that comes when you have nothing left to lose. The sky was gray the next morning. Not cloudy enough for rain, but dull enough to match how Adama felt inside. She stood by the water tank behind the house, her hands inside a bowl of soapy water. She was washing her only good wrapper. Her fingers moved slowly, almost as if she didn't want the wrapper to get clean. Maybe if she delayed long enough, the wedding would be cancelled. Maybe something, anything, would happen to stop it. But she knew better. Nothing ever saved her. Not when her parents died. Not when she came to live with Uncle Oziu Amina. Not even now. From the window, she heard voices. Goy, bring out the second bench, Aunt Neka shouted, and tell Chenier to clean the sitting room. What if guests start arriving early? Adama continued washing, not bothering to look up. She knew the wedding would be a small one. No decorations, no celebration, only a few family members and maybe the pastor, if he didn't change his mind last minute. As she spread the wrapper on the line, she noticed something strange. There, across the compound, sitting under the mango tree again, was the beggar, Obina. He wasn't limping today. He was sitting calmly, reading a book. The cover was black, thick. It didn't look like something a poor man would carry. Adama paused. She stepped back slightly, trying not to be seen. She tilted her head. Yes, he was turning the pages gently, with the confidence of someone who had read many books before. Why was a crippled beggar reading a hardcover book like a professor? Then, as if he sensed her eyes on him, Obina looked up. Their eyes met. He didn't panic. He simply closed the book slowly and gave her a small nod. Adama blinked. She turned and walked away, her heart beating faster than it should have. That was not the first time she had noticed something odd. The day before, she had seen him fixing a broken kettle outside the neighbor's house. The kettle had no handle, and its lid was missing. But within minutes, Obina had tied the lid using a thin metal wire and made it work again. She had watched from a distance, pretending to sweep. And that was not all. 3 days ago, a madman was shouting near the market. Everyone avoided him. But Obina had walked up to him, whispered something in English, and the man became calm, completely calm. That moment had stayed in Adama's mind. The beggar could speak fluent English. So, who exactly was she marrying? That evening, as the sun started to go down, Adama sat outside, peeling cassava for the evening meal. Her fingers moved slowly, and her mind was far away. "Do you think you will faint tomorrow?" Goy asked, walking past with a tray of cups. Chenier giggled behind her. She better pray he doesn't collapse at the altar or worse, crawl to her on both knees. They both laughed and walked away. Adama didn't move. But inside her, something was shifting. Her heart was no longer just afraid. It was also curious. Deeply curious. Later that night, as the compound grew quiet, she found herself walking to the back of the house again. And just like before, he was there. Obina, sitting on the same stone under the same moon. "You came," he said softly. "I didn't plan to," she replied, her voice low. "But I couldn't sleep." He moved slightly, making space for her. "You can sit if you want." Adama stayed standing. "I saw you reading today." He smiled. "I read a lot." "Where did you learn to speak English like that?" she asked. He paused, then said, "From school." "What kind of school?" "A good one." She crossed her arms. "You keep speaking in circles." "I'm not trying to hide anything from you," he said. "Then who are you?" she asked. "Because I don't believe you're a beggar. You act different. You talk different. You walk different sometimes." Obina looked at her quietly. Then he said, "Maybe I'm just good at pretending." "That's not funny," she replied. "I didn't mean it as a joke." They stood in silence for a while. Then Adama whispered, "Are you punishing me?" "No," he said quickly. "I would never do that." "Then why me?" she asked. "Why choose me of all people? They're giving me away like trash." "You're not trash," he said firmly. "You're gold. They just don't know how to value you." She swallowed. "I didn't choose you because you were poor or weak," he said. "I chose you because you had a good heart, even when you had no reason to." Adama blinked, her eyes hot. "I've been watching," he added. "Not in a creepy way, just observing. You helped an old woman cross the road when everyone else ignored her. You stopped a boy from killing a lizard because you said everything deserves to live. You smiled at me the first day we met. That was before I knew you were my future husband," she muttered. He chuckled lightly. "Fair enough." She finally sat down beside him. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What happens after the wedding?" "What do you mean?" "Do I go with you? Do we sleep in the bush or under that tree you like so much?" He looked at her. "You'll come with me, but I promise you, you won't lack shelter. You'll be safe." She looked away. "That's still not an answer." He nodded. "You'll understand everything soon." Adama sighed. "Why do I feel like I'm walking into something big, and I don't even know what it is?" Obina stood up slowly. "Because you are." He turned to leave but then paused. "Good night, Adama." "Good night." The morning of the wedding came with silence. No drums, no music, no visitors, only quiet footsteps, hushed voices, and fake smiles. Adama sat inside the small room she had known for years, staring at herself in the cracked mirror. The torn lace gown hung loosely on her shoulders. Aunt Neka had given her old powder to use, and her lips were dry. She looked like a bride that was being punished. Aunt Neka entered. They are waiting. Come out. Adama stood up slowly. As she stepped into the small sitting room, she saw Uncle Oziu Amina, Goy, Chinier, and 3 neighbors sitting like they were at a funeral. The pastor stood near the door, checking his watch. Obina was there too. He wore his usual ragged clothes, but today they looked cleaner. He still held his walking stick, but his shoulders were straight. They brought out the table and placed a Bible on it. Let's start, the pastor said. Time is going. The pastor opened the Bible and read a short verse about love and patience. His voice was fast, like someone reading because he had to, not because he believed in what he was saying. Then he asked, "Do you, Obina, take Adama as your wife?" "I do," Obina said calmly. "And you, Adama, do you take Obina as your husband?" Adama's throat was dry. She looked at him. Then she looked around the room. Her uncle's eyes were cold. Her aunt's face was hard. Her cousins were smirking. But Obina's eyes, they were kind. She whispered, "I do. By the power given to me, I now pronounce you husband and wife," the pastor said quickly. "You may go." That was it. No clap, no cheer, no rice, just silence. Obina turned to her and said, "Let's go." Adama followed him out of the house. Aunt Neka didn't say goodbye. Uncle didn't look back. As they walked out of the compound, she didn't cry. She was done crying. They walked for a short while before turning into a small path by the main road. Adama was confused. "Are we not taking the bush path?" "No," Obina said. "We have a car." "A car?" she asked, surprised. Then she saw it. A black SUV parked quietly under a tree. The driver stepped out quickly and opened the door. "Good afternoon, sir," the driver said. Adama's eyes widened. "Sir." Obina smiled and helped her into the car. "Sit," he said gently. "You're safe now." As the car pulled away from the village, Adama sat in silence, her hands folded on her lap. Her heart was beating fast. This was not how poor men lived. This was not how beggars behaved. And yet, here she was, sitting beside the same man who had once begged for food at the market, but now had a driver and an air-conditioned car. She turned slowly to him. "Obina," she said. "Yes. Please tell me the truth." He looked at her. She whispered, "Who are you?" The SUV moved smoothly along the road, quiet inside, but loud in Adama's chest. Her heart kept beating fast, her palms still sweating. She had just said, "I do," to a man she didn't know, a man the whole village believed was poor. But now they were sitting in a clean black SUV with air conditioning and a driver who called her husband, "Sir." Adama couldn't hold it anymore. She turned to him again. "Obina, please. This doesn't make sense." He turned to her, calm as always. "What doesn't make sense?" She looked around the car, then pointed. "This. The car. The driver. Even the way you're sitting now." He didn't say anything. "You are not a beggar," she whispered. "You've never been." He smiled softly. "I never said I was." "Then who are you?" Her voice was sharp now. "Because I married a beggar today. But the man I'm sitting beside now is not a beggar. He's something else." He looked out the window for a second, then looked back at her. "My name is Obina Wuku, but that part is true. Everything else, I had to hide." Adama blinked. "Obina Wuku. Wait, why does that name sound, you may have seen it on the news or on one of the big company boards in Lagos," he said. Adama's mouth slowly opened. "No, no, no, no." "Yes," he said gently, nodding. "I own Wuku Group of Companies. She covered her mouth. Wait, that's the company that owns half of the transport stations in the east. He nodded again. Yes. Her eyes grew even wider. And the real estate people in Asaba and the rice factory in Enugu. You're the one. Yes. Adama leaned back in her seat. Her chest was rising and falling quickly. She wasn't breathing properly. But why? Why did you act like a beggar? Obina looked at her. Because I wanted to know the truth about you, about your uncle, about everyone around you. Adama shook her head slowly, trying to catch her breath. I don't understand. You will, he said. Let me explain everything. He leaned forward and folded his hands. Many years ago, my father was a businessman too. Your uncle, Oziu Amina, worked with him. Adama's head snapped up. Yes, Obina continued. Your uncle was the middleman in a land deal between my father and a royal family, but he was greedy. He forged signatures, collected the land money twice. By the time my father found out, it was too late. The land was gone. The title was fake, and our name was dragged through the mud. My father lost millions. Adama's mouth stayed open. He got sick not long after, Obina added. The stress killed him. Adama's voice cracked. And my uncle never told anyone. Of course not, Obina said. He kept quiet. Your aunt knew too. She helped him cover it. Tears filled Adama's eyes. So, you came for revenge. Obina shook his head. No, I came for the truth. I wanted to see if anyone in that house still had a clean heart. I went back to the village dressed like a beggar, limping, dirty. I wanted to see how people would treat me when they thought I had nothing. Adama lowered her head. You were the only one who treated me like a human being, Obina said. You didn't look away. You didn't insult me. You didn't join your cousins to laugh. You gave me water. You greeted me with respect. Adama sniffed, wiping her eyes. I knew then, he continued. You were different. But I had to be sure. So when your uncle offered to sell you off to me, I agreed. Adama looked up again. You agreed to buy me? I didn't buy you, he said firmly. I rescued you. He was going to throw you out anyway. But I wanted to see what choice you would make, whether you would still say yes, even when you thought I was nothing. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, so everything was a test. Obina nodded. Yes. She looked out the window. Trees passed by quickly, but her thoughts moved even faster. You were watching me the whole time, she whispered, testing me. I was hoping for a reason to believe in someone again, he replied. And you gave me that. Adama turned to him. Her voice was low and sharp. You know what hurts the most? What? You were the only person who saw me as a person. Even when I thought you were poor, even when you limped and wore torn clothes, you still looked at me like I mattered. He swallowed hard. And now I find out, she continued, you're rich, powerful, important, but you never told me. I wanted you to see the real me, he said. Before you saw the money. Adama nodded slowly. And now what? We go to our new home, he said. Where you'll be safe and respected. She looked down at her hands. They were shaking a little. Will I ever go back to the village, she asked. If you want to, he said. I do. He looked at her. Why? Because they need to see, she whispered. They need to see what God did for me. 1 hour later, the SUV turned into a wide private road. The gates ahead were tall, gold-colored, and shiny. Cameras blinked on both sides. As the car approached, the gates opened slowly. Adama's mouth dropped open. Behind the gate was not just a house. It was a mansion, 3 stories tall. Fountains danced in front of the driveway. Flowers lined every corner of the fence, and servants were already outside, dressed in uniforms, waiting. The car stopped. A man in a suit opened the door. "Welcome, sir." "Madam, welcome." Adama stepped out slowly, her old wedding lace still hanging loosely on her shoulder. Her sandals were dusty. She looked like someone who had come to beg for food. But they all bowed to her. "Good afternoon, madam," they greeted. Obina held her hand gently. "Come." She followed him into the house. Marble floors, golden lights, a staircase that looked like it belonged in a palace. Every step she took, she felt like she was dreaming. But it wasn't a dream. This was her new home. Later that evening, after she had bathed and changed into fresh clothes, she stood on the balcony, looking at the garden below. Obina came beside her. "So what now?" she asked. He looked at her. "Now you live. You breathe. You heal." She nodded. "And them? Your uncle and his family?" "Yes." Obina's jaw tightened a little. "What do you want to happen?" "I want them to know I'm not the failure they thought I was," she said. "But I don't want revenge." He smiled gently. "Then you're already better than them." Adama looked down at the ring on her finger. It was simple, silver, yet it felt heavier now. She turned to him again. "Thank you for seeing me." He nodded. "Thank you for being you." She looked out at the sky. Stars were beginning to show. She whispered, "Tomorrow. Can we go back to the village?" Obina raised a brow. "So soon?" "I want to see their faces," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I want them to see the beggar and the bride." Adama didn't sleep much that night. She tried to close her eyes, but her mind kept turning. So many things had happened in one day. That morning, she was the poor orphan bride nobody wanted. By nightfall, she was in a mansion, married to a man the world thought was a beggar, only to discover he was one of the richest men in the country. It didn't feel real. She stepped out to the balcony again and looked at the sky. The stars were out, clear and bright. A soft breeze brushed her cheeks. She hugged herself and took a deep breath. From behind, she heard his voice. "You should be resting." She turned around. Obina stood in the doorway. He had changed into a simple white shirt and black trousers, but he still looked calm, still the same man she had spoken to so many times in the dark corners of her uncle's compound. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Same here," he replied. He walked over and stood beside her. They both looked at the garden below. "Do you still want to go back?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said. He nodded. "Then we'll go in the morning." Adama looked at him. "Will they believe it's real?" "They won't have a choice," he said. "You'll be standing in front of them." "I don't want to make noise or brag," she said quietly. "But they need to know that what they tried to destroy was protected." "They'll see it for themselves," Obina replied. "That's enough." They stood there for a moment, saying nothing. Then Obina turned to her. "We'll leave after breakfast. It's about 2 hours from here." Adama nodded. Then she whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not throwing me away like they did." He looked at her. "You were never the problem, Adama. You were just the easiest to blame." By 9 a.m. the next day, the black SUV was ready. The driver stood by the door, waiting. Obina was dressed in a fitted blue suit with dark sunglasses. He looked nothing like the man who used to limp around the village in torn slippers. His presence alone was loud. Adama wore a simple but beautiful gown, white with gold beads along the sleeves. Her hair was brushed and tied up, and her skin glowed softly under the morning sun. The staff stood outside, bowing as they passed. The gate opened slowly, and the SUV rolled out. Inside the car, Adama held her fingers tightly in her lap. She wasn't nervous. She was just full of things she had never said. "Do you think they'll come outside when we get there?" she asked. "They won't have a choice," Obina replied. "What if they insult us again?" "They can't," he said calmly. "Not this time." Adama stared out the window. Trees passed quickly. Houses blurred behind them. Her village was coming closer with every mile, but her heart was not the same. The village square was unusually quiet when the SUV drove in. Children stopped playing and pointed. A few old women dropped their baskets and squinted. People whispered. Some stepped out of their shops. "Who's that?" someone asked. "I think it's a minister," another said. "Or a government person." Then the car stopped right in front of Uncle Oziu Amina's house. The door opened. Obina stepped out first, tall, calm, unshaken. Then Adama followed, and the entire village gasped. Aunt Neka was standing at the gate, holding a broom. She froze. Goi ran out, dressed in a wrapper, and stopped halfway when she saw them. Chinier peeped from the window, then ducked immediately. Uncle Oziu Amina slowly walked out, his face pale. Adama didn't say anything. She just stood there, peaceful, whole, strong. Obina turned to the driver and said, "Bring it." The driver opened the back of the SUV and brought out a small box. He carried it to Obina and stepped back. Obina held the box in both hands and walked toward Uncle Oziu Amina. Nobody spoke. The entire street was watching now. Even passers-by had stopped to look. Obina handed the box to him. "This is for the debt your family owes me." Uncle Oziu Amina didn't take it. "What? What is this?" he asked. "It's not money," Obina said. "It's the truth." Adama stepped forward. She looked her uncle in the eye. "You called me cursed," she said quietly. "You said I would marry a madman. You told the world I was nothing." Nobody moved. "And yet," she continued, "God still remembered me." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't come here to insult you. I came to show you that even when people try to bury a seed, it can still grow." Aunt Neka opened her mouth but said nothing. Goi stepped back and entered the house. Adama turned to her cousins. "You laughed at me. You called me names. You said I would beg to eat." They looked away. "But today," she said, "I came to give, not to take." She reached into her bag and brought out another small envelope. She walked over and placed it on the bench beside the house. "For you and your daughters," she said to Aunt Neka. "Buy something nice." Aunt Neka's lips trembled. Then Adama faced the crowd that had gathered. "I'm not better than anyone here," she said. "I'm just proof that your story doesn't end where others leave you." Then she turned and walked back to the SUV. Obina followed quietly. The driver opened the door, and just before she stepped in, she turned around one more time. "Thank you for kicking me out," she said to her uncle. "If you didn't, I would never have walked into my real life." The door closed, the car drove away, and the village remained frozen. In the car, Adama sat back, breathing slowly. Obina looked at her. "You didn't have to give them anything." "I know," she said. "But I needed to." "Why?" "Because if I left them the way they are," she said softly, "then I would become like them." Obina smiled. "You're nothing like them." Adama nodded. Then she said, "Thank you for taking me back there." "You were the one who faced them," he replied. She turned to him, voice low. "You know what I felt when I saw their faces?" "What?" "Pity." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That means you're free." She looked at the trees passing outside. "Now I'm ready," she said. "Ready for what?" he asked. "For whatever comes next." Adama stayed silent for most of the ride back. Her head rested gently on the car window, but her mind was still in the village. She kept seeing Uncle Oziu Amina's face, shocked, confused, frozen. She remembered the way Aunt Neka's lips trembled, and how Goy had quickly disappeared inside the house, like a thief caught red-handed. But what stayed with her most was how peaceful she had felt when she said, "Thank you for kicking me out." That single sentence had healed something deep inside her. Obina didn't say anything either. He let her process everything in her own way. The only sound inside the car was the soft hum of the engine and the distant chirping of birds outside. After almost 30 minutes of silence, Adama turned to him. "Did you know?" she asked. "Know what?" "That they were going to treat me that way." Obina looked straight ahead. "I suspected, but I didn't expect it to be that bad." She nodded slowly. "I knew they didn't love me, but I didn't know they hated me that much." "They hated your light," he said. "Some people hate what they can never become." Adama breathed deeply. "There were days I almost believed them. Days I thought maybe I really was cursed." "You were never cursed," he said calmly. "You were just surrounded by people who couldn't see your worth." She looked at him. "So what now?" Obina turned to her. "Now I tell you everything." When they returned to the mansion, lunch was already waiting. They sat in the dining room, a wide hall with long glass windows, silver spoons, and white plates neatly arranged by trained staff. Adama picked at her rice slowly. Her appetite was still hiding. Obina dropped his spoon and leaned back in his chair. "My father died 10 years ago," he began. Adama looked up. "He was strong, tough, honest. He built our family's business from nothing. Started with a small transport company in Onitsha. By the time I was 15, he had over 20 buses across the east." She nodded slowly, listening carefully. "But not everyone liked his success," Obina continued. "Some men wanted fast money. Your uncle was one of them. He worked with us, trusted like family. He introduced us to a land deal in Abia, said it would double our value. My father believed him." Adama's eyes didn't blink. "It was a lie," Obina said flatly. "The documents were fake. The land had been sold twice, and my father lost everything." He clenched his fist. He tried to stay strong, but the shame killed him faster than the loss. He fell sick and died in his sleep. Adama's mouth tightened. "And they just continued life like nothing happened." "Yes," he said. "They even spread rumors. Said we were careless, that my father was greedy. Nobody knew the truth." She swallowed. "So you came back to punish them?" "No," he said. "I came back to test them." She blinked. "How?" Obina leaned forward. "After my father died, I took over. I built the company again. Slowly, carefully. I didn't want to be seen. I didn't want the spotlight. I wanted to grow in secret." Adama nodded. "I dressed like a beggar, not just in your village. I went to many places, watched how people treated strangers. I gave some of them jobs later, helped some disappear from poverty. But I was looking for something more." Adama tilted her head. "What were you looking for?" He looked straight into her eyes. "Someone real." She paused. "Real? How?" "Someone who wouldn't see my money," he said. "Someone who wouldn't try to impress me. Someone who could sit beside a beggar and still feel human." Adama's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. "That day I saw you," he went on, "you were carrying firewood. You helped a crying boy who had lost his sandals. You tied his shoe with your scarf." Adama frowned. "That wasn't a big thing." "It was everything," Obina said. "You didn't know anyone was watching. That's what made it real." She slowly dropped her spoon. He looked at her. I didn't choose you because I felt pity. I chose you because you reminded me of the kind of woman my mother was. Strong, patient, kind. Tears filled Adama's eyes. I wanted to be sure, he continued. So when your uncle tried to push you on me like trash, I agreed. I wanted to see your heart. Would you laugh? Would you mock me? Would you run away? She whispered, I didn't know what to do. Everything was happening so fast. And you stayed, he said. You didn't shout. You didn't curse. You just endured. Adama lowered her head. Because I had no one else. I didn't stay because I was brave. I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. He shook his head. You stayed because you were strong. Adama looked at him, tears dropping down her cheeks. Do you really see me like that? He reached across the table and held her hand. More than you see yourself. Later that day, they walked through the house together. Obina showed her every room, the office, the private library, the indoor garden where rare flowers grew. At one point, he opened a door to a wide room filled with sewing machines. What's this? She asked. My mother loved tailoring, he said. She used to sew for women in the village even after we became rich. After she died, I opened this place in her name. Adama walked slowly through the room, touching one of the machines. It smells like peace in here. He smiled. That's what it's for. She looked at him. You've been alone for so long. I had to be, he said. There was too much noise around me. Too many people pretending. And now? She asked. He looked into her eyes. Now I have someone I don't have to pretend with. That night, after dinner, Adama sat on the soft couch in the living room, staring at a photo on the wall. It was Obina as a little boy, sitting on his father's lap. They both wore matching white clothes, smiling without fear. Obina walked in and sat beside her. Do you ever miss them? She asked. Every day, he said. She looked at him. Do you think they'd be proud of you? He nodded slowly. I think so. They sat there in silence for a while. Then Adama said, there's one thing I haven't said. What? I forgive them. Obina turned to her. Your uncle. All of them, she said. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. He smiled. That's the most powerful thing anyone has ever said to me. She rested her head on his shoulder. Maybe now I can really start again. You already have, he said. The next morning, the sun came out bright and proud. It was the kind of morning that made the birds sing louder than usual, like they were trying to share someone's good news. Adama stood by the mirror, brushing her hair gently. The room she now called hers was wide, clean, and filled with soft gold curtains that danced with the wind. But her thoughts were back in the village, not with pain this time, but with purpose. She had forgiven them, but she hadn't forgotten. Today, they were going to visit a women's center, a new project Obina had funded quietly. It was in a nearby town, not far from the village. It trained poor widows, single mothers, and orphans on how to sew, bake, and make money from small things. Are you ready? Obina asked, walking into the room. Adama turned, tying the last part of her gown. Yes. You look beautiful, he said. She smiled. Thank you. As they walked down to the car, one of the staff handed Obina a brown folder. He opened it quickly, flipped through the pages, and then gave a short nod. What's that? Adama asked as they entered the SUV. A surprise, he said, tucking it into his side. Adama raised a brow. Another one? Obina chuckled. This one is special. For later. They arrived at the training center around noon. The women there were already waiting. Most of them had never seen a billionaire in person before, and definitely not one married to a girl they once saw walking to fetch water in worn-out slippers. When Adama stepped out of the SUV, the whole place froze. The women whispered, "That's her. The girl that married the beggar. No, she's glowing. See her dress. See her skin. She looks like a queen." Adama smiled and greeted them all warmly. She shook hands. She hugged. She even sat beside one old woman and helped her measure a piece of fabric. The room came alive. But it wasn't just her beauty or her new clothes that moved them. It was her kindness. The way she looked into their eyes when they spoke. The way she laughed gently at their jokes and didn't act like she was better than them. That was what made them love her. After the visit, as they drove back toward the mansion, Adama looked out the window and whispered, "They treated me like I was one of them." "You are," Obina replied. "You always will be." She smiled. "I think that's the real blessing. Not the house, not the money, but being able to stand anywhere and still be me." Obina nodded. "That's what makes you different." Then he reached for the folder beside him and handed it to her. "What's this?" she asked, opening it slowly. "Property documents," he said. "Lands, shops, buildings." Her eyes widened. "What?" "They are yours," he said. "All in your name, free and clear." Adama stared at him, speechless. "I want you to have your own power," he continued, "not just wear my name, but stand tall on your own." Tears filled her eyes. "Nobody has ever done anything like this for me." "That's because nobody ever saw your true value," Obina said. "But I do." She closed the folder carefully and held it to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. 2 days later, word spread across the village like wildfire. The beggar Adama married was a billionaire, and she was now the rightful owner of 3 shops along the main road, plus a bakery site that had been abandoned for years. People were shocked. People were ashamed. But the most shocked of all was Uncle Oziu Amina. He sat on his broken bench that morning, staring at the walls of his house like someone waiting for the roof to collapse. Aunt Neka paced the kitchen angrily. "What kind of thing is this? How can Adama be the one God lifted after everything we did? After everything we said? She tricked us," Goy muttered, folding her arms. Chinier hissed. "That girl has always been sneaky, acting quiet all the time. Meanwhile, see her now, walking beside a man with cars and guards." Uncle Oziu Amina stayed quiet. His face was stiff, his mouth dry. A neighbor walked past and shouted over the fence, "Uncle Oziu, I hear your daughter is now richer than the chief. You better go and beg her." Goy flinched. Can you imagine the insult? That afternoon, they called a family meeting. "We must go and see her," Aunt Neka said firmly. "It's not pride, it's wisdom. If we wait too long, her heart will turn." Uncle Oziu Amina said nothing, but deep down he knew she had every right to ignore them. Still, he wanted something else. He wanted to clear his name. So, he wrote a short letter and told a young boy to deliver it to the mansion. Adama was surprised when the boy brought the note. She opened it, read the shaky handwriting, and paused. "What is it?" Obina asked, coming beside her. "It's from my uncle," she said. "He wants to talk." Obina took the letter, read it too, and then looked at her. "Do you want to see him?" She folded the letter and placed it on the table. "Yes." He didn't ask why. He just nodded. "I'll have a car take you. You can go alone if you want." She looked at him. "You trust me that much?" He smiled. "I always have." Later that day, Adama stepped into her old compound once again. This time, there was no fear in her steps, no shame in her shoulders. She walked with quiet power. Uncle Oziu Amina sat outside, waiting, his head down. When he saw her, he stood quickly. "Adama," he began. "Thank you for coming." She said nothing yet. "I don't know what to say," he added. "What we did to you, it was wrong. Very wrong. I have no excuse." Still, she said nothing. "I know you don't owe us anything," he continued. "But I just wanted to say I'm sorry." She looked at him carefully. "Why now?" "Because I see the truth now," he replied. "You weren't the problem. We were." From behind the door, Aunt Neka peeped. Goy and Chinier stood in the shadows. Adama turned slowly to them. "You all said I was cursed. You made me feel like I was a mistake." They didn't speak. "But even if you hated me," she said, "you didn't have to sell me off like a slave. You didn't have to throw me away just because other people saw something good in me." Tears ran down her cheeks. "I forgive you," Adama said at last. "But don't ever treat anyone the way you treated me. Not even a stranger." She reached into her bag and brought out a small envelope again. "Use this to repair the leaking roof," she told him. "And maybe fix the broken bench." He tried to speak, but she turned and walked away. That night, back in the mansion, Adama sat beside Obina on the balcony. "I did it," she said. "I know," he replied. "Do you think they'll change?" "Maybe," he said. "Maybe not. But you did your part. That's what matters." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Sometimes I still feel like I'm dreaming." He smiled. "You're not." "I used to think I would die poor in that house," she whispered. "But now look at you," he said. "You've become the kind of woman people write about." She laughed softly. "Or gossip about." He chuckled. "Either way, you're shining." Adama closed her eyes, and for the first time in her life, she felt whole. It had been 3 weeks since the day Adama returned to her village in glory. 3 weeks since she stood in front of the people who once laughed at her and showed them that she was no longer the girl they tried to crush. 3 weeks since she forgave the people who broke her. But to Adama, it still felt like yesterday. Not because she was holding on to the pain. No, but because every morning she woke up and saw the woman in the mirror, she smiled. The old Adama was gone. The new Adama had risen, not because of money, not because of fancy clothes, but because she had walked through fire and didn't burn. And now she wanted to help others find that same light. One sunny morning, she stood in the center of a half-built compound. The cement blocks were stacked neatly. The foundation was strong. The sound of hammers and shovels filled the air. Obina stood beside her, holding a water bottle. "This will be the women's hostel," she said, pointing. "For those who have no homes." He nodded. "And that side?" "A skill center," she said proudly. "Where they'll learn tailoring, soap making, food processing, anything that can help them grow." He smiled. "You've turned your pain into purpose." She looked at him. "Isn't that what life is about?" He said nothing. He didn't need to. The look on his face said everything: pride, love, respect. Not many people could take wounds and build bridges with them, but she did. Later that week, Adama was invited to speak at a gathering of young girls in the town hall. Most of them were between 13 and 18, orphans, poor, abandoned, forgotten. When she stepped into the room, there was silence. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't wear gold. She wore a simple white gown and black flats. But her presence filled the room like a calm fire. They clapped, not loudly, but with meaning. When she took the microphone, she smiled gently and said, "My name is Adama, and just like you, I didn't have much." The hall stayed quiet. "I lost my parents when I was 11. I was moved from place to place like a sack of beans. I ate leftovers. I wore old clothes. I slept on torn mats. Some girls lowered their heads. Others wiped their eyes. But let me tell you what I didn't lose, she continued. I didn't lose my kindness. I didn't lose my heart. She looked around the room slowly. People will call you useless. They'll say you're too poor, too quiet, too weak. But listen to me carefully. The room leaned in. You are not too anything. You are enough. She paused. You don't need a rich man to save you. You don't need a title to make you important. Just be good. Just stay kind. Help others. Work hard. And when the door finally opens for you, because it will, walk in with your head held high. The whole hall clapped. Some girls stood. One girl ran forward and hugged her. Adama hugged her back, whispering in her ear, I believe in you. Later that night, Obina sat with her on the balcony, both of them sipping tea. That speech was powerful, he said. I was just speaking from my heart, she replied. That's why it worked. She looked at him. Sometimes I still wonder what would have happened if you never came to that village. He smiled. Then maybe you'd still be in that compound, sweeping the floor and eating cold food. She chuckled. Maybe. He reached for her hand. But the truth is, I was always going to find you. She looked at him. Why? Because good hearts always shine, he said, even if it takes time. She grew quiet. Then she whispered, I want to go visit my parents. Obina nodded. Tomorrow? Yes. The next day, she dressed in a blue wrapper and tied her head with a matching scarf. No driver, no SUV, just her and Obina in a small car. They drove to the edge of the village where her parents had been buried under a mango tree. The grass had grown tall. The earth was dry, but the spot still felt sacred. She knelt beside the grave and touched the soil. Mama, Papa, she said gently. I came to tell you that I made it. Obina stepped back and gave her space. I'm not hungry anymore, she whispered. I'm not sleeping outside anymore. The people who mocked me, they now greet me with respect. But more than that, I'm happy. Truly happy. She wiped a tear from her cheek. Thank you for watching over me. Thank you for teaching me to love others. Even when I had nothing, I still carry your words every day. She stood slowly. Obina walked to her and held her hand. They stood there, silent. Then she said, let's build a small shelter here for people to come and rest. Let's plant flowers. Let's make this place beautiful. He nodded. We will. Months passed, and the story of the beggar's bride spread across towns. Some said she married a madman. Others said she was a prophetess who saw the future. But those who knew the truth knew this, she was simply a girl who stayed good when life was unfair. And because of that, she was rewarded, not just with wealth, not just with a loving husband, but with peace and the power to lift others. One afternoon, as she was walking through the new bakery she opened for village women, she stopped beside a young girl kneading dough. The girl looked up nervously. Adama smiled. What's your name? She asked. Chisholm, the girl replied. Do you like it here? The girl nodded. Yes, Auntie. Adama handed her a bottle of cold water. Do you know why I built this place? Chisholm shook her head. Adama knelt to her level and said, because someone once looked at me and said, you're not worth anything. And I promised myself I'd never let another girl feel like that again. The girl smiled shyly. Adama stood and said, one day, you'll help others too. That night, Obina came home with something small in his hand. A gift, he said. Adama opened the box and gasped. It was a necklace, silver, simple, with one word carved into the heart-shaped pendant, seen. She touched it gently. You remembered, she whispered. Obina looked at her. I saw you when nobody else did, and I'll keep seeing you every day. She wore the necklace. Then she hugged him tightly. Epilogue: a few years later, Adama's foundation opened 10 centers across Nigeria. She spoke in universities. She sponsored orphans. She sat with world leaders. But every time someone asked her, "What changed your life?" she said the same thing: kindness. That's it. That's the whole story.